Hello and hi everyone. We are moving to the third session of the day. Welcome to the second day of Blockhash Live 2020. Myself Anshu. It's my privilege to walk you through the panel discussion on blockchain adoption in Indian context. We are honored to have special guests who are experience enriched and versatile in their respective background. A warm welcome to the respected delegates. Let me introduce the speakers of the hour. Dr. Saji Gopinath. He is the Vice Chancellor of Kerala University of Digital Science, Innovation and Technology. He was the former Director and Professor of the Indian Institute of Information Technology and Management, Kerala. Also the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, a central agency of the Government of Kerala for entrepreneurship development and incubation activities. Under his visionary leadership, the state won many accolades, including the State Startup Champion, Kerala Management Association Technology Leadership Award in 2019 for the second consecutive year. Welcome Dr. Saji Gopinath to the panel. Next we have Dr. Rajeshri MS. She's the Vice Chancellor of APJ Abdul Kalam Technology University, also the former principal to the Government Engineering College, Barton Hill, and LBS Institute of Technology for Women. An active academician with demonstrated history of heading several higher education institutions focusing on computing and IT-based academics. Also a researcher with a PhD degree in computer science and engineering from IIT of Madras. I welcome you, ma'am, to Blockhash Live 2020 and the panel. Next we have with us Jayesh Ranjan IAS. He is currently serving as a Principal Secretary of Industries and Commerce, IT and Electronics and Communication Departments of Government of Telangana. He is a recipient of the World Bank Social Capital Visiting Scholarship in 2002 and British government's Gurukul Shiving Scholarship in 2005. He is a part of the National Pool of Trainers and Leadership constituted by the Government of India and is involved in training and mentoring the newly recruited civil servants. On behalf of KBA family, I welcome you, sir, to Blockhash Live 2020. Next, we have with us Mohammad Bhai Safirullah IAS, a 2010 batch IAS officer. He is the present Additional Secretary of the Department of Electronics and Information Technology of Kerala Government. He early served as the Ernakulam District Collector, Director of Kerala State IT Mission, and Deputy Secretary of IT Department and Project Director of eHealth Kerala. On behalf of KBA, I welcome you, sir, to Blockhash Live 2020 and the panel. Last but not least, we have J.A. Chowdhury. He's the chairman of the Indian Blockchain Technology Standards Committee, also the General Partner of Succeed Innovation Fund and Founding Director of Software Technologies Park of India. J.A. Chowdhury was one among the key architects for setting up the International Institute of Digital Technologies at Tirupati, also setting up the IT ecosystem in Hyderabad and Cyberabad. He also served as a founding member for Portal Player, which was responsible for designing and manufacturing the core silicon chip for Apple's iPod. He is currently mentoring many startup companies in emerging technologies. It's an honor to have you all today at Blockhash Live 2020. It's my privilege to welcome you all to discuss the adoption possibilities of blockchain technology in India. Welcome all and thank you for joining the panel. Thank you for sparing us your precious time. So before we start, a little housekeeping rules for the audience. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom panel. We'll bring them up at the end of the presentation. Over to you, Rajeshri, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity to moderate this panel, which consists of members from different segments, each one of which will contribute tremendously to the adoption of blockchain in the government context. So I have roughly given a few themes to the speakers based on their alignment with the topic suggested for the discussion. And it will be like this. Dr. Saji Gopinath will be dealing with the role of education, research, and startups in blockchain technologies for fostering blockchain adoption in India. Shri Jayesh Ranjan IAS will be discussing about his experience with blockchain adoption in Telangana and views to share from a national perspective. And Shri Mohammed Vai Safrullah IAS will take us through the global scenario in blockchain adoption with focus on its relevance to India. And Shri J.A. Chowdhury will give us uh, insights on the standards for blockchain and how standards can become an enabler for adoption, and the present status of what is happening in the standardization efforts and the plans that India has ahead to make blockchain adopted to its full potential. So we all agree that blockchain is, it's theoretically, we all state that it is a very promising technology for adoption. It provides a trust-based collaboration platform, and which brings in various parties like government organizations, businesses, and private enterprises, everything onto this platform for various operations of the government, and creating even virtual enterprises. Though it is grouped with other jargons like machine intelligence, machine learning, IoT, and all these, there's a tendency to group this technology as well with these kind of emerging technologies. But there is a fundamental difference that comes in, because there is a lot of thing that needs to happen for the adoption of this technology as such, because of its distributed nature and the various stakeholders and the complexity involved. It is not only individual solutions and products and services that can be built, but it has to do with lot of things in the formulation of policies from the government, because it fundamentally affects a lot of our institutional structures, our organizations, our governmental operations, our financial operations, and the conventional processes that are followed as what do you call, as manifestos in the governance. So it is the adoption, successful adoption means successfully addressing these fundamental structural and organizational concerns and policies to bring it to operational side. This is not as easy as it is said, because it has things to do with the government of India and also the state governments. If they are trying to touch upon for a specific solution, then it has to deal with multiple concerns, and all these cross-cutting concerns make the adoption of blockchain in the Indian context. So we have experienced people from all areas to talk to us on this, and I request Dr. Saji Gopinath to speak on this. Though I have given an indicative theme, you are open to speak on your views on this, so that at the end of the panel we are able to come up with some rules to follow, or some actions to take it forward, because the whole of the discussions that has been happening yesterday and today, everything will be fruitful only if we are able to list out a few action items. So Professor Saji Gopinath, please.
Good morning. Good morning, Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Rajeshri and Chairperson of this panel, and esteemed panel members. As Dr. Rajeshri has rightly pointed out in the introduction, blockchain, as we all know, that it's a very transformative technology. So compared to many other industry 4.0 technologies, here it is not just a small change, but it's more of a fundamental change which we are expecting. So when we look at education, research, and the application, which is currently happening primarily because of, or primarily driven by the startups, we may have to look at from that perspective. We know that even though in a country like India, where blockchain offers such a large amount of opportunities, and this Block Hash Live this year and the previous years were discussing about various such opportunities, even today the real adoption is actually very small. Of the projects which are actually being implemented primarily by government and even few by the corporate sectors, you can see most of them are at the POC level. Only around 4 to 6% are actually gone into the production level per se. So that is basically the reason why we need to actually start looking at. And even when you look at the startups, the amount of investment which has come to Indian startups compared to the global space in the blockchain is also not very, very impressive. So one of the reasons could be that as a fundamental technology, it is important that the technology has to pervade into various fields. But today, if you look at the education of startup in the country, we can actually divide them into 2 or 3 buckets. We have, if you look at primarily the education or the training is happening in the technology space. And that also done mostly by the private players. There are national institutions. If you look at the national institutions, you have IIT Bangalore, IIT Hyderabad, IIT Bombay is just starting, and IIT Kharagpur. These are the few of the top and IIT MK through the KBA. So these are the few top institutions who are actually getting into the education space per se. But it is still not prevalent. Maybe one course may be there, but a full-fledged blockchain program is still not prevalent in the other universities and other education institutions yet. Even though Amity has a program, it is still not gone into the level in which, if you look at compared to data sciences, or if you compare that with analytics, or if you compare that with AI, these are the areas where today most of the universities are actually creating the talent or developing the talent. To that level, blockchain has actually not been gone. But much more pressing need, I think that is something which we may have to look at, is that leave the technology institutions, because when you are a fundamental change, you require the law institutions to study this. You require the art institutions to study this. You require the other institutions to study that. The amount of blockchain education into such institutions is actually almost virtually nil in the country. And if you look at even in the business schools, IIM Indore has got a program, and few other IIMs are actually offering 1 or 2 courses on that. But even now, that has not gone into the level which would have happened. And this has to be looked at from the study which NASSCOM did a couple of years back, where they were speaking about a quarter-to-quarter increase in demand of around 40% in blockchain technologies and related talent. Even with such a demand happening, we are not seeing enough number of the blockchain education across the various domains per se. But I believe good point is that today the education is global. You have global universities coming and offering programs. Even in India, all these institutions, whether it is IITs or IITs, they're all using online platforms. So the availability of the technology courses are there, but need to increase more. But application of this in multiple domains is actually something which is a gap. I'll leave it there. Maybe after later we'll have more discussion on that. Now, when you come to the research part of it, which is also equally important when you look at the technology, we know that one of the challenge with the early forms of blockchain is interoperability issues, the power consumption issues, and many of the technical issues were actually being highlighted in blockchain 1.0, blockchain 2.0, etc. And over the years, there is a substantial amount of technology development which is happening over there. And even research also can be divided into 2 parts. You can actually look at one part primarily focusing on the technology, which is primarily looking at the theory of the blockchain, the DLTs, models. You look at the security, privacy, and related aspect of it. The second is on the application, which is primarily driven by the public sector. Niti Aayog has come out with a strategy paper in the beginning of this year, where they actually identified the sectors where the blockchains are actually being tried out, whether it is in the pharmaceutical supply chain, whether it is in the claim management supply chain, the insurance supply chain, the university certification supply chain, and actually come out with several practical issues which when you start implementing it on the field. Now, I'm still not sure whether such issues are actually coming under the domains of research in the social sciences, in the humanities schools, the management schools yet. While there is a substantial amount of masters and PhD theses are happening in the area of blockchain technologies, the application research issues in a large country like this is actually something which is also need to be looked at. We also have some private or corporate research institutions like IBM Research, etc., which is also advancing this field into the next level person. Now, it is actually heartening to note that some of the global blockchain companies are now actually instituting research fellowships in the country, and I'm sure that many of you may be familiar with the Ripple has actually selected out of the 17 universities, which their University Business Research Consortium, which they are selecting 17 universities, 2 of them, IIIT Hyderabad and IIT Bombay, are from India. And they are actually supporting postdoc as well as doctoral research in this area through the support. So such corporate supporting the research, corporate supporting blockchain research is actually a way forward if you look at the research point of view. So we have 2 elements here. One is an element which primarily looks at the technology and fine-tuning the technology, looking at the gaps in the technology and addressing it. And parallelly, there should be a field of research which looks at the real adoption issues, looking at challenges, because we still have challenges on the standards, we still have challenges on the unified formats, and also the inefficiencies in the conventional system. So these 2 things have to go parallelly into the research field per se. Now, finally, let me also put a little bit on the onto the field of startups. And as we know that when the Bitcoin came, it was actually maybe a period of startups. It's a golden period of startups. You have a lot of ICOs and others have come, and startups have actually gained a substantial amount of traction in that. But following that, you have also seen a number of startups who are engaged in the blockchain technologies, and most of the POCs in the country are actually driven today. It's true that there are some large companies like IBM, etc., involved, but substantial amount of thing is actually happening through the startups per se. Now, the latest traction report says that India today has around 218 startups who are working in blockchain technologies. Obviously, this number is small compared to the global number on this, and this number is even much more small when we're looking at the investment which has come to Indian blockchain startups. Many of these 218 have got either seed fund or maybe a Series A fund into the range of maybe up to maybe 8 million or something like that. Typically much smaller amount, but there are maybe few who have got a larger amount also. And if you look at globally, if you look at the applications, only around 30% of blockchain startup applications happen in the exchange and trading, which I think is not something which India is favoring. But other 70% of applications happen in other things. How do you actually make the transaction solutions? Looking at enterprise blockchain solutions, looking at ecosystem development solutions, identity, security, authenticity solutions. So those are the areas where multiple levels of startups are actually working. And there are startups who are doing well, but the numbers again has to go up in this area. And it's also, even the Niti Aayog report also have actually looked at, and even other research reports in the Indian context also looked at. They found that the real, if you look at the various sectors of the country, and like Madam rightly pointed out at the start, this can actually work on all the fields. The real application has happened, or applications happen more in the fintech and related aspects. And in India, especially in the BFSI, is the area where many of the startups work. But of late, it's actually moved to the other areas. Even in Kerala, along with the startup, the Kerala Development and Innovation Strategy Council is actually started a POC in the area of healthcare, in the area of retail, in the area of manufacturing, etc. But these are all recent adoptions. But over the period, I believe that you will see many number of startups coming in this area. But what is required is you also require a large growth, because blockchain as a technology have to become popular. A large amount of adoption has to happen. And when a large amount of adoption happens, the venture capitalists also will be keen to actually invest onto the startups, which actually go into a virtuous cycle as such. But we need to break that. That is, I think, the challenge which we need to look at. How do we actually break from this POC, maybe pilot, to a full-fledged application models? As we see many of the cases, it is still driven substantially by the public sector, by governments. Very proactive governments are driving it. The corporate sector has also had to play a very big role now to see that blockchain is as a technology is actually have huge amount of potential. And once that happen, I think this whole 3 elements of education, research, and the implementation will come hand in hand. I think that is some of the issues which I'm sure the other eminent panelists also will be throwing light on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Saji, for walking us through those 3 pertinent areas which has a lot to contribute to the adoption of blockchain. And you have brought out an important aspect, the need to have different domains to come together, not only from the application point of view, but also from education and research point of view, to come out with strategies for the adoption, especially in the formulation of public policies when it comes to restructuring the existing systems of governance. And those remarks and those pointers, data pointers on the startup and the abysmally low startups in the country is also worth mentioning, because we need to do something out there. Only if there is promise of adoption from the government and other entities can such startups will come up, and they will be able to contribute meaningfully. And more important thing is, it's not transforming an application to the blockchain technology, but it is the value that it is bringing. So we need to have actual case studies, like Government of India in the Niti Aayog document says that it has to take the ease of doing business as a vision that is to be implemented using this technology, which brings in tremendous value, which is accepted by the public. That becomes very critical for the adoption. So with this, the next panelist, we have Sri Jayesh Ranjana IAS, and we have an extremely eminent case study here. We have a person who has been driving the blockchain district in Telangana, and there are certain listed out application areas, like the land record cleansing exercise with involving more than 10,000 villages, then the certificates of class 10 and class 12. So we read about all these, and as the in the motor vehicles department, it is to track the life cycle of vehicles. It could be for any inventory, for that matter. It need not be for vehicles alone. So some models, if it comes out successfully, it can be replicated across various other domains also. So we have a person to speak us about this, which really worked on such a hub, creating an ecosystem, bringing in all the components like startups, government organizations, private entities to showcase the real applications of blockchain. Over to you, Sri Jayesh Ranjana IAS, for enlightening us on your efforts and putting it from a national perspective for us to take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chancellor, and very good morning to fellow panelists. Greetings to all the attendees, all the viewers. As Madam introduced, I work for the government in Telangana, and for the last 5 years, we have focused on use of blockchain to solve some of the most challenging topics which the government face, and obviously through the government vehicle, it helps lots of people also. So Madam spoke about some of the use cases that we have already launched very, very successfully. And some of these use cases are now becoming more and more common in other Indian states also. Now, practically school records, etc., university records, etc. I guess so many schools, so many institutions, so many universities throughout the country have shifted to blockchain-based technology, which provides document security and makes it tamper-proof, etc. Land records also are getting blockchain enabled in many other states. But I would like to highlight two very important use cases that we are working on, and maybe if time permits, I'll give few other examples also. But these two things which I want to share about are really going to be very path-breaking. They will show to the whole world what is the importance of blockchain. And I'm very confident that once these two use cases become live, they are at the design stage. But once they become live, I mean, people will talk about them, and the entire stature of blockchain in the technology basket, that will go up many folds. So the first use case that we are working on, and it is 10:25, as I can see from the clock where I'm sitting. In 5 minutes from now, at 10:30, our teams are making presentations before Government of India. So this is about vaccines. Now, all of us know what is the importance of vaccines today. I mean, everyone is looking forward to the vaccine. And of course, vaccines are at a very advanced stage of development. I'm happy to share with you that Hyderabad-based companies actually have taken a lead in development of vaccines. There are 3 Hyderabad-based biotechnology companies who are leading the race, besides one which is located in Pune. And it is expected that the indigenous vaccine, the Indian vaccine for COVID-19 will be ready maybe by in a month's time or so. And then mass vaccination programs will start. Now, we all know that tracking and tracing the vaccines also, the entire chain of vaccine supply is also very, very important. And it will be very important also to maintain the integrity of the vaccine. See, I live in Hyderabad. Hyderabad is not only the vaccines capital of the world, but it is also the pharmaceutical capital of the country. And we have seen in the past so many cases of counterfeiting of medicines, etc. Unfortunately, there are some unscrupulous elements who do these kind of things. They make fake medicines, they circulate those medicines in the open market, and obviously it is first of all, it is very, very, very criminal to do such a thing, because a person in good faith, a patient in good faith, if he eats a fake medicine, not only will he not get cured, but he may also lose his life. So we are literally playing with the lives of the people. So there are unfortunately such criminal elements, and of course the police is doing what they need to do, but technology also has a solution. So since, as I said, Hyderabad is a very important pharmaceutical center, a few months ago, maybe around 7-8 months ago, we have started a small pilot. So as Mr. Gopinath mentioned, some of the blockchain initiatives are still at a pilot level, POC level. The one which I'm referring to is also at a POC level. We started a blockchain-based trace and tracking solution for cancer drugs, for anti-cancer drugs. But the POC has given very positive results, and therefore we have now got emboldened that we can do this for the entire vaccines management. And as you know, for a country of 1.3 billion people, so many vaccine doses will be required, and obviously the whole country has to be covered, the entire length and breadth of it, and multiple cold chain stock points and then distribution points. And I mean, a large logistics infrastructure will have to be, of course, not completely created afresh, but will have to be requisitioned to ensure that the vaccine reaches the farthest corner of the country and every person gets this vaccine, so that we are able to get back to our normal lives. So we have a solution which has worked well for the cancer anti-cancer drugs counterfeiting. And we are now offering, we have written to the Government of India. The Government of India found merit in our concept. And today at 10:30 a.m., our teams have been called to the Health Ministry to make a presentation before the Joint Secretary. So hopefully in a few minutes, the presentation will start. And I'll be also waiting very, very anxiously to get to know from them what exactly happened and what is going to be the next step. But I'm very confident that whether our team's solution is accepted or someone else's solution is accepted, but the blockchain-based technology is the one which is very, very needed for a massive, large-scale program of this kind, where there is always a risk that someone unscrupulous will try to game the system or will try to as I said, play with the lives of the people. So this is one very important thing. And tomorrow, as we all know, the emergence of this vaccine is being awaited for months altogether now. And this is the only hope that all of us have today. And tomorrow, when it is done successfully, and then once it comes into public light, that blockchain-enabled technology secured this distribution, imagine the kind of confidence it will build on blockchain systems and all that. So this is one case which I want to talk about. It is still a work in progress, as I said. Evaluation is happening in Delhi, and it will take a while for them to communicate the decision. But the fundamental technology is ready. As I said, it has been tried out in a small scale on this cancer drugs counterfeiting, and we have been able to show how every batch which is produced in the pharma company can be tracked and traced using this blockchain systems. The second case study that I want to talk about is also something extremely significant. In fact, that also will be a game changer, which is regarding remote voting or home-based voting. Now, we all know that elections have their own dynamics in our country. I guess in Kerala also some elections are going on right now, or maybe they got over yesterday or day before. But elections keep happening in our country, and we all know that there are all kinds of deficiencies in the present electoral system. Now, we are working on a very important project, and while the project is hosted by us, our blockchain district, but lots of very eminent professors, faculty members from IITs, from other kind of eminent organizations, they have contributed their inputs and their knowledge in this solution development. So this is a home-based voting, so which means that you don't have to go to a polling station to cast your vote. It is the Estonian model. Some of you may know that in Estonia, no one needs to, there is no concept of a polling station. Everyone registers online and votes online. So obviously, when you are voting online, there need to, first of all, it is you only who is claiming to be the voter. The identity has to be verified and confirmed. So there is a methodology that we have developed through which voter identification can be foolproof, and it can be checked for accuracy, etc. The second part is how do you cast your vote, and how is your vote stored by maintaining the secrecy, as well as it is tamper proof. No one is able to kind of play around with your vote. And this is where we have been able to bring a blockchain enabled solution. We had elections very recently, just about 15 days ago, for Hyderabad city. The Municipal Corporation of Hyderabad conducted its elections. And because of this COVID situation, the election authorities, the State Election Commission, felt that this can be offered as an alternative to elderly people who are kind of skeptical and who are in a vulnerable situation. I mean, who's going out and standing in queues, etc., will lead them to a greater risk. So this is a request which had come to us from the State Election Commission, and in time for that election, we have completely prepared the solution. Everything is ready, but unfortunately, the State Election Commission was not able to get the act amended. You need, because in India there is no concept of e-voting or home-based voting. There is an act which governs voting, which does not talk about these things. So the legal experts pointed out that unless you amend the act, the sanctity of this process will not be accepted. And if anyone goes to the court and challenges it, then you will not be able to move at all. And earlier to Hyderabad, there were elections conducted in Bihar, as all of us know that. So in Bihar elections, the facility was given that those who are elderly or those who are COVID positive and who are recovering or who are in home quarantine, they can come at the very end at 6 o'clock. And then the last 1 hour will be reserved for such people. So our Hyderabad election commissioner also relied on that methodology. And he also kind of, I mean, we could not run the e-voting module, but he allowed the elderly people and the COVID cases to come and vote at the end. But the point is that we have been able to develop that technology. We could not demonstrate it because the law amendment could not happen. But we have readied the technology, and we are hoping that in our state of Telangana, there are forthcoming local body elections, not for the entire state, but a couple of municipal corporations are going to vote in the next coming 2-3 months. And if the pandemic scenario remains as it is, the necessity to have this kind of a remote voting and allowing the elderly and the COVID positives to vote from the home itself without compromising on any aspect of their identity impersonation or their sanctity of the vote or tampering possibilities, etc., etc. So we are very keen to roll it out, and hopefully, since there is some time, the State Election Commission should be able to get the law amendment as well. So these two are, in my opinion, these two cases, the COVID vaccine case and the e-voting case, these will be milestone use cases, which will confirm to the whole world that blockchain solutions can be very effective solutions. Of course, blockchain cannot be implemented anywhere and everywhere. There are certain kinds of scenarios, and we see Madam Garu mentioned in her opening remarks that only in cases where there is too much of distributed activity, there's an element of mistrust, there's lack of transparency, one person does not know what the other node is doing, and so on and so forth. So these are the ideal scenarios where blockchain implementation will work the best. And in our opinion, the vaccine case and the remote voting case, these two cases are the perfect cases, and they will give confidence to other states and other users also to adopt blockchain wherever these kind of circumstances prevail. So, I mean, as I said, there are many other Telangana examples also, but these two, which in my opinion will be the defining examples, I wanted to share these with you, and I'll be happy to speak about other examples also, maybe in the next round of interaction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sri Jayesh Ranjan, for those very fascinating case studies. And we are all looking at the pandemic and how to address the pandemic effectively, contain it, and the tracing and tracking of vaccines is very significant. And we hope your proof of concept will win, and we will adopt in the entire country for people to get motivated with such examples which really touches the life of people. And then coming to the second, so we are used to work from home and teach from home, and now it is vote from home. That is really good, and there are very good takeaways for people to work on. Whoever is listening to the panelist, it is very interesting, and you also brought out an important aspect which we have been discussing all along: amendment of the act. That is where things get stuck with, and that has to be considered along with the launch of the application or the proof of concept itself. You have to see what is existing and what the law says, what the ordinance says, and then how the system can be changed fundamentally. So thank you. And we have really benefited from these examples. Now I request Sri Mohammad Waisafirullah IAS to speak to us on the global scenarios of blockchain adoption and the opportunities in India, because you are with the department which is the nucleus of such activities, empowering the e-governance and other which plays a pertinent role in connecting all other departments to exercise the governmental functions. Your remarks will definitely help the audience to get real insight into things. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, eminent panelists and the participants. I would like to dwell on 2-3 points today. One about the global scenario and about the opportunities for blockchain in India, and a couple of pilot projects that we are doing in our state of Kerala. As we know that in January 2020, Niti Aayog came with the Blockchain India strategy. And over a period of time, particularly in the last 2-3 years, there has been a lot of momentum in this particular area. If you look at a few indicators worldwide about India, where we stand, the first one about the ease of doing business, we have come a long way forward. In the 2020 edition, in the ease of doing business, our country is ranked 63. However, if you look at two of the sub-parameters which contributed to the overall ranking, one is about enforcing contracts. If you see enforcing contracts, India stands 163 out of 190 countries. The second parameter, sub-factor, is about property registration, where we stand 154 out of 190 countries. These two are the areas what I would like to point out, that is in enforcing contracts and the property registration, where comparatively across the globe, we have a lot of scope for improvement. The second rating is about the Transparency International, which is about the perceived level of public trust, where we are ranked about 78 in 180 countries, among 180 countries. So in these two indicators, we understand that there is a issue of trust in many of the public systems that is there. And therefore, blockchain offers a lot of scope in this particular area. Shri Jayesh sir was pointing out to various examples in his state and in our country on the use cases of blockchain. We all know about the Amravati Land Record Management System, and also about the way in which Gujarat Narmada Valley Fertilizers and Chemicals Corporation had also worked in seeing to that the subsidies are linked to blockchain issues. In this context, from the international experiences, what I feel is that we have scope in 4 areas. The first one is the financial market settlement. Many of the stock exchanges across the globe, for example, the Australian stock market, even in our own country, we are doing a lot of pilot models for settlement. And this has tremendous opportunities in terms of reducing the settlement cycle from T+2 to almost real time. So the first application where we can expand this is in the financial market area, where the trust is the foundation of all transactions. The second area where I see a lot of scope is wherever the financial subsidies are transferred, like the one I talked about, the fertilizer subsidy, or any other substantial subsidy in terms of maybe an MSME related or industrial subsidy. So wherever the subsidies are transferred based on some government scheme, we can use blockchain to see to that the subsidy transfer is real time and also authenticated. The third area where we have a lot of scope for improvement and application is in the area of agriculture. We have a lot of geographic indicators products which are sold at a premium across the globe. For example, the entire route to India was discovered based on the access to agriculture and spices product in general. So if you look at in Kerala, the spices from Kerala and many places in our country command a premium price across the globe. So if we can have a unique form of geographic indicator, which is blockchain authenticated, there will be a lot of prosperity in this particular field. The fourth area of application is in about the certificates in basically the human resource management. We have a lot of certifications, degrees, and continuous trainings. And whenever this recruitment or even in governments, when we see a profile or the CV of a candidate, it's important to see that these are authenticated. And this is an area where there is a tremendous possibility, and it is something that can easily be done because the certificates and degrees are done mostly by a well-regulated mechanism, and even the training certifications at the company level is highly controlled. So this is an area where easy adoption of blockchain and the results of such an adoption can be easily seen. So these are the 4 areas I like to point out. Now, India, I find we have a vantage point because we have the necessary infrastructure in place. About when we talk about the mobile penetration, we have a good mobile penetration and it's vastly increasing. The broadband availability is also increasing, particularly in the rural areas, with various projects of Government of India, right from National Optic Fiber Network to BharatNet, and the recent expansion on the areas of public Wi-Fi. We have the trained manpower, and more importantly, we have the unique ID, Aadhaar, which is the largest biometric authentication system in the entire world. In Kerala, we have a few pilot projects which are running, basically like a proof of concepts. One is in e-health project, we are trying out an Aadhaar vault, and one where the biometric identities can also be encrypted and stored and validated using blockchain mechanism. In e-health project, we are trying to create an electronic health record for all the citizens. And by using the blockchain, we are trying to explore if the authentication mechanisms and the trust of the public in general can be increased. Where, for example, As a citizen, one wants to know if someone has accessed the Aadhaar, the electronic health records illegally or with permission, or where it has been used. So all this can be stored, and it can be validated later on, both by the individuals and by technocrats and by whoever the neutral agency who wants to verify. So this is one area I find that electronic health records can be expanded, in a big time in our state, and I feel across our country also. The second project which we are trying to initiate is about geographic indicator in agriculture sector. Again, about the spices and certain other GI products which are used, which are commanding a premium price across the globe. And this is something that we want to see, because one of the major concern of the buyer is that whether this product is genuine or not. There are a lot of claims for organic products and genuine, let us say, Idiki spices and things like that. So we want to see if this can be done. The third one is in the areas of certificates itself, and to link it with the biometric systems to see how we can use blockchain in this particular area. I'd like to conclude by putting two critical factors for success. One is that, in my view, as I believe eminent panelists would agree, is that blockchain is not a panacea for all problems. Where systemic issues exist, the systemic issues have to be corrected. And blockchain can help us in addressing the trust issues. But in areas like, for example, land record management, we have been trying to do a lot of things over a period of decades, but not met with successive results, because the issue is more systemic in nature, and where it can be tried out in certain areas where there are lesser systemic issues, but it cannot be seen that this particular technology can solve all the issues or replace the systemic concerns. The second one is about I feel we have to differentiate between technology and trust in the technology. For example, we talked about elections. The first time the electronic voting machine was used in India was in the district of Ernakulam in North Paravur constituency in the year 1982. And 22 years later, in 2004 general elections, EVMs was used across the entire country 100%. So it was almost a 2-decade journey where firstly the legal systems were changed, various litigations happened, the public trust was gained. So the point I'm coming to is we need to differentiate between technology and public trust in the technology. Yes, we all know that EVM is non-tamperable and it's solid and all those things. But whether public trust it or not, that's a different ballgame where we are talking about the human element. So this I find is valid even in blockchain. We all know about digital DLT technologies and about blockchain encryption mechanisms. But to what extent will public trust this? That is a critical question we all have to answer. So the adoption of blockchain would also depend to a large extent on the extent to which public start trusting the technology. So as it's not sufficient that only technocrats trust DLT technologies and move on. So we should be able to build on the public trusting mechanisms and things like that. And that is where one example that I said about eHealth project, where the electronic health record, if you can encrypt and use blockchain, that would be easily seen and understood by any common layman or citizen, and even by third-party, verifiers, to see that yes, it does work, and that will start building the trust system. So these are my initial comments, ma'am. Thanks for the opportunity.
That is interesting, Safi, and all those the areas where it can be tried out. Like you said, the last point that you said, brought out is the how to bring public trust. So one of the mechanisms we can think about from your first point, like when you say blockchain is adopted for financial settlement, you assign some parameters. When reducing the cycles of time, and it is because of this technology. I don't know to what extent that kind of model can be used for increasing trust in people, but that seems interesting. And then all the other points like subsidies, these are all things which reach people where it can be used. And this agriculture geographic indicators, KBA is already working on such a project, I believe, the Agri Chain, where this sort of thing is tried out. And in the certificates and HR in educational institutions and with employers, let me also extend it a bit further on the new policy shift that you would have noticed on the ABC, the Academic Bank of Credits, where you can you can do some courses and take it after a few years, and then so there it will be really fascinating to keep track of the credits you have earned from IIT Bombay, and then you bring it back to IIT, IIT and see how. So if such a framework can be built for ABC, implementation of ABC, it will be really interesting. And one thing we face when we look at implementation in actual systems which are running, where we see potential opportunity for blockchain implementation, is how to integrate it with the existing framework. Can we have a system which takes a few aspects alone, and then the system implemented using blockchain successfully overlays what is existing? So that is where one fundamental implementation difficulty or challenge would come in, because completely revamping the existing architecture and bringing in something new powered by blockchain will be we can't be, the continuity of business has to be ensured in educational institutions and giving certificates, everything. So we do have a system which is completely on a platform which admits students and gives degrees, but when such a transformation comes, how well you can bring it in. So that is also something we can think about. So that is really interesting, looking at the global success stories and how we can bring it to the country, and also the efforts of a state like EHR, which is a very promising area to work upon, because there are also subsidies in treatment and everything is involved, which can be easily captured and authenticated. So the trust issues and the technology and trust in the technology, those are very, very important, as you pointed out. Now I come to the last panelist, Sri J. Chowdhury, for enlightening us on the standards, the efforts on standardization, and how this can be an enabler for bringing in blockchain solutions to the governmental systems. So over to you, Sri J. Chowdhury.
Right. Thank you, madam. Good morning to all the panelists. Thank you, madam. It's a very enlightening discussions today, particularly from government of Telangana and also government of Kerala. The kind of blockchain applications which they are working on, they're definitely unique applications. Say, as Safi was also mentioning, this technology is just not the pure technology issue. A lot of systemic issues are also there. For example, when we implemented the blockchaining, the Amaravati land records, we were not able to take that further because we need to change a lot of local laws, Government of India laws, state government laws, and the land registration process itself has to be changed. So such systemic issues are there for blockchain technology implementation. Unlike other technologies where you bring a new technology and that technology can work for all the applications. Here, lot of issues, local issues. Also, for example, Jayesh Ranjan brought out the voting, electronic voting. Why they were not able to implement, again, systemic issues and local laws have to be amended and all that. So in spite of all that, I think how the Indian, some of the state governments like progressive state governments like government of Tamil Nadu, government of Telangana, Kerala government, I think a lot of new case studies are being tried out. And in fact, I've been following the other countries also. Compared to all the rest of the world, the kind of case studies on the blockchain technology happening, there are more case studies from India compared to any other country. And that's where the advantage, this thing, and most of the state governments, not only they understood where the blockchain technology can be implemented, where it cannot be implemented. These issues also, I think, unlike other governments, we're blindly following blockchain, whether it is useful or not. In our this thing, definitely there is a lot of improvement is there. So as far as the standards are concerned, this pandemic, because of the pandemic, there is an impact on some of the discussions. We were supposed to meet physically to discuss on some of the new standards. There's a delay because of that. Otherwise, I feel that in about a year's time, the ISO is going to issue the blockchain standards. See, once the standards are issued, today for a common man, which blockchain have to be implemented? Whether this blockchain, as Safi was mentioning, public trust is missing. So for public to get the public trust, you need some international body to okay, this is the standard, international standard. It is once a company follows the international standard, its interoperability is there, and no other issues also will be there. So definitely, I see there's going to be more implementations to come once the ISO International Standards Organization issues the standards globally, particularly for smart contracts. Definitely, that standards are going to come fast. And as somebody was mentioning, it's a trust protocol. Blockchain, unlike other protocols, blockchain protocol itself is a trust protocol. Particularly in the current situation where common people are worried whether my money in the bank will be stolen by some hackers and all that. There's no trust, and if they don't have trust in the digital system, if the farmers are losing money because somebody is hacking their bank accounts and taking away the money, then the whole digital system will come to a big halt. So technologies like blockchain definitely can provide some solutions to bring the trust. For example, today, a lot of digital currencies, not Bitcoin currencies, sovereign digital currencies are coming up in many countries. Many countries are coming up with the crypto exchanges also, including companies like PayPal. PayPal is not only allowing the fiat currencies to go through their mechanism, they are also allowing the cryptocurrencies, the sovereign digital currencies also go through the coming in the, for example, the asset, the coinization of the assets. For example, somebody wants to own, say, Infosys stocks. Today, I cannot buy the Infosys stock at this value. If you can do the tokenization of that stock, make the stock into, say, 1,000 pieces, each 1,000th of the piece, somebody can invest and still they can exchange that a small piece of that share. So these are the technologies which are now enabling blockchain technology to really provide the solutions. I am very, very confident the kind of case studies that our respective state governments are bringing onto the table. I think once the standards are announced, maybe after 1 year, there's going to be wide adaptability of the blockchain standards, and many companies today, a lot of companies have adopted the pilots, but there is no actually, the people cannot see that, yes, it has been implemented properly, whether those companies are getting funding from the venture capital. That's not happening because of various systemic issues or standards are not released yet and all that. But I am very confident that because of the trust protocol, because of the security issue, because of the immutability of the protocol itself, this blockchain technology is going to really bring a lot of solutions to the common man and enhance the trust of the common man, so that digitalization of the activities that what various governments are doing, various countries are doing, that cannot take a hit. And I'm sure that blockchain can provide that solution. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Sorry for interrupting, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, we are happy to extend the session for another 15 minutes. If the panelists are ready to share a little more interesting bits on the topic, we'll be very happy to hang on with the session for another 15 more minutes.
Okay, so based on the inputs from other panelists, I suggest that each of the panelists can express their views after listening to the other panelists. Professor Saji, are there any specific remarks from your side based on the other discussions?
I think it is a very exciting discussion, and as I said at the start, the governments and public departments are actually taking the lead into this whole thing of application of the blockchain. But I think what government has set the way need to be followed up by the private sector also. Then only that the large scale demand of blockchain specialists and experts is going to come. Now that we are still not seeing. I mean, it's low in the globe and very low in the country. So the experiences and the experiments the government has done in multiple domains and the very success stories which Mr. Jayesh Ranjan has rightly pointed out actually should be motivating for even for the private sector to start looking at how do we adopt it into their domain as it. That actually will lead to a large number of options. Like you have options in education, you have options in research, you'll have options of more number of companies coming in. So this whole technology is going to be useful because today we spend a substantial amount of money in our organizations primarily to ensure compliance. And compliance is coming out of lack of trust. So if a technology can actually ensure trust in a decentralized manner, many of these compliance costs can actually come down. And that is where this actually will be able to be applied as such. And that I think is, and that also requires maybe a relearning market is going to get opened up in a big way. A lot of people who are currently using technologies may have to actually start looking at. And I think at a national level also, we need to look at the other issues which I think panelists have mentioned, which is beyond technology, but on a larger scale, has to be discussed in education and other spaces. That I think is a very big takeaway because we have seen the success. Now we need to actually scale up the success and start adopting in a big way. That's what my take on this.
Yeah, I think it will be like any technology. If we look at ATMs also, if you look at the history of ATMs, there are some people who are very old. They will still prefer to go to the bank and do not own an ATM card. So it is see from on the personal front, it's like that. So it will take time. Like the EVMs have gotten that level of trust in people. It is going to take a long time for people to adopt it. And Shri Jayesh Ranjan, any specific remarks based on the other panelists' views?
Yeah, I will also make one additional point, listening to other eminent panelists, which is the need to build an ecosystem. See, if you are doing standalone kind of projects here and there, then the kind of impact that you intend to achieve, that will really not happen. So, own experience. You mentioned also in your introductory remarks about blockchain district. So I would like to take a minute to explain what this blockchain district is. So as the name indicates, it is not a geographical entity. There is no district, there is no physical pin code or whatever. It's a conceptual district. But the meaning is that multiple players, diverse players have been brought into that network. And we have been very fortunate to get support from different kinds of stakeholders. So, of course, the initiative is led by the state government, but we have a Government of India institution in Hyderabad called CDAC, Center for Development of Advanced Computing. So, they are one of the partners of the blockchain district. We have two very eminent academic institutions. And again, we are very keen to ensure that technology comes out of typical engineering institutions. See, normally, when we talk about any technology, we think of partnering with the IIT or IIIT, etc. But in our blockchain district, there are two partners. One, of course, is a very important technology partner. And Mr. Gopinath also pointed out, IIIT now plays a very important global role also. They are in a global consortium which is working on blockchain. So they are a very obvious founding partner and stakeholder in the blockchain district. But we have included the Indian School of Business also. See, ISB, as all of us know, is a management school. It is a business school. But people who come out of ISB, who complete their education and then move out to corporate world, they are typically people who hold key decision-making responsibilities. So they may not be technology leaders, but they are people who will decide about adoption of technology. And therefore, we have brought in ISB as an important stakeholder and partner in the blockchain district. Then there are private companies. So for instance, Tech Mahindra, which is a homegrown, which is a Hyderabad headquartered multinational, they have a very strong blockchain practice. So they are one of the partners in our blockchain district. Similarly, we have identified something similar to the Kerala Blockchain Academy, where skill development is a very important mandate and responsibility. So we have identified an institution which runs programs for blockchain skilling. It is a European institution, a Dutch institution, and they are one of the founding members. And then we have large number of startups. So Gopinath also spoke about how are we encouraging startups. The number of startups who have blockchain based initiatives are very few. So we are actually trying to change that. We are encouraging more and more startups to look at blockchain solutions. And one reason why startups in general, but particularly blockchain startups, find the going to be very easy in Telangana is because of a very important policy. The policy is that if the solution, if the startup's product or solution is of relevance to the government, then we will procure it bilaterally. There will not be any tendering process or bidding process or RFP, and the government guarantees that we will procure it. It is not an option that, okay, if I want, I'll procure, otherwise I'll not. So all these use cases that I speak about, including the vaccine use case, of course, the voting use case involved a larger company. We did not, because it's a very sensitive topic, as others pointed out. It is not just about the technology, but people's faith in that technology. So I cannot tomorrow go out in the public and tell that this blockchain solution was done by a startup who has just maybe 1 year of experience or 2 years of experience. So for the sake of public credibility, we brought in a very large company to do the blockchain bit of the e-voting solution. But the vaccine tracking and tracing solution, the presentation which is happening in Delhi right now, is actually the outcome of a startup activity. There's a startup which has done that, and they are right now in Delhi as we speak. So this is the comprehensive manner in which we need to move forward in blockchain adoption, etc. Government has to take the lead, but government has to realize that everything needs to be done in a partnership, and there are better partners outside the government who can accomplish multiple things. So you have to have that kind of vision and understanding that you have to create the platform, but then you have to populate that platform by the talent which is available outside the government. So Telangana example has been quite illuminating in this respect. And I hope that tomorrow all of us will be able to create a very strong blockchain movement in this country.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very interesting, because if we look at the genesis of IIIT Hyderabad itself, the success of an institution which can immediately respond to the needs of the IT industry, and it becomes a win-win kind of situation where industry sponsored activities in the campus, and then labs, and then technology gets evolved and it is being used by the government. So the entire loop is completed there, and let us hope that we will also be able to come up with such model where we create a hub which identifies the customers as well as triggers the whole the chain around the customers and users and startups, research and academics, skilling, everything comes together, and it becomes a cohesive entity like this blockchain district. Let us assume that something comes out of KBA and government of Kerala along those lines to take this forward, and as a strong academic entity, the new university that is to promote such futuristic technologies, the Digital University of Innovation, Science and Technology is also coming up. So any specific comments on this, Sri Safirullah is?
Just a couple of points, ma'am. Yes, I agree with the panelists' overall view that we need to increase the partnership with research institutions and also create an ecosystem like what Jayesh was mentioning about Telangana. We are in the initial stages and we have a long way to go, and to create that ecosystem. I feel once that ecosystem is created, we will have a crowding in effect where automatically a lot of innovations through startups and other things will start happening. The second one is about Kerala's startup mission itself. Professor Saji Gopinath was there earlier as CEO. We are giving a lot of support to our startups, particularly in this innovative areas like blockchain and other areas of AI. And we believe they will be what can I say, the torchbearers of this particular technology. KBA through IIITMK, and now the university is doing a great job and creating the resource base for all the startups, for helping the government also with this adoption. I feel in the coming years we would see a lot of more not only proof of concepts but broad-based adoption of blockchain in general in various walks of life. And we are also in touch with NIC and CDAC also here to use blockchain in e-governance applications. Unfortunately, we don't find any e-governance applications coming up which is using blockchain. So we are trying to see if that can be done. Very simply, as we already discussed, the SSLC higher secondary certificates is something which can easily be done because it's highly controlled, regulated. So to conclude, I would like to say yes, the coming years would be exciting, and we'll have large, broad-based adoption of the technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Shri J. Chowdhury, any specific attempts by Government of India to have a uniform framework or something to be adopted which can be used across applications for implementation of blockchains? Any such thoughts or any?
Ma'am, as far as Government of India is concerned, the Indian Standards Organization, Bureau of Indian Standards, they are the ones, they're trying to come out with Indian standards for the blockchain technology, which will be in tune with the global standards. So we're working on that. We feel that unless we have some this kind of a technology where a lot of issues, as many people suggested, that the public trust is still not there for the technology itself. I think once those standards are released by Bureau of Indian Standards as well as International Standards Organization, I feel that even the VCs also will come forward and look for investment into those companies, because large-scale adoption will happen. Once the large-scale adoption happens, then the possibility of return on the investment will happen for the VCs. So it's a cyclic kind of a thing. So we feel that today why it's not happening is hardly there are few cases where, except the trade finance in the fintech world, they're not really commercially so much successful blockchain adoption world over, including India. That's the reason why the angel investors or the VCs are not really looking at investing in companies into blockchain. For example, whatever Jayesh Ranjan mentioned, the COVID that application is a very fantastic application. If that startup can implement that application, and if they can make the billions of people use that application, and that can be replicated by other countries. And once we see the success of that, probably VCs also will start getting into where we can see the investment opportunity in the blockchain technology.
Okay, thank you. So we also have a couple of questions from the people who are listening to this. And one is, will EVM come under e-voting? I'll put this question to Shri Jayesh Ranjan.
No. So EVM is the regular voting procedure that you go to a polling booth and there is an EVM, you cast your vote. Remote voting means you can vote from home. So obviously there will be no EVM at your home. You will have to vote using your mobile phone. So EVM will not come under remote voting. Remote voting means that you can vote using your mobile device. And obviously, when I mentioned earlier, the device has to be registered beforehand. You as a voter have to get registered. Your photo will be matched when you come to vote. When you get on your phone to vote, you will have to prove that you will have to take a self-image and show that it matches with your photo, which is already stored. Then there will be an OTP through which your voting process will be activated. So we have created the entire workflow, and we have been able to kind of test it also, but it has not been tried in a live election situation, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, another question is the discussion has been focusing more on the adoption of blockchain as technology and how it can bring VC, but not really on the problem which blockchain can solve. So what are your thoughts on that? Probably I'll ask Safi to answer this.
I think panelists brought in various use cases on how blockchain can solve. Basically, it can start with where the trust is lesser, where, for example, the financial markets is one use case where everyone agrees it is done, across the globe now. And what was mentioned about vaccination and about other GI, that is geographic indicators, those are use cases, and I feel over a period of time we'll have more adoption. These are right now proof of concepts in various parts, bits and pieces, and it remains to be seen in coming years. We'll have, I believe, we'll have a broader ecosystem.
Ma'am, I have a question to both Safi as well as Jayesh Ranjan. Actually, the implementation of blockchain in e-governance, why it is not happening? Because we have seen Amaravati land records did not go anywhere. Because of the registration process, the lot of amendments, the local amendments and Government of India amendments on the land registration activity, the whole thing have to be this thing. So this kind of issues are there, the systemic issues. Do you think, respect to state governments and the Government of India will come out with some kind of a policy measures to remove these bottlenecks so that implementation of the blockchain becomes more smooth in the country?
Yeah, so I agree with you, Jay Garu. This is definitely true. I think the solution lies in what Tamil Nadu has tried. Unfortunately, Santosh has not joined us, but Tamil Nadu has started a program of blockchain as a service. So they have their own created their own blockchain platform, which they offer to any department as a service. So tomorrow, let us say, so in Telangana, I'll give you very quickly one other use case. There is in all the states in our country, there is a someone is given a part of it, and again that is a scenario where there is absolute lack of transparency and lots of mischief happens. In fact, I'm sure all of us are aware that in one particular state, I don't want to name any state or run down any state, but there is in one particular state of our country, this has become a very big scam, and in fact even the government may fall there because of this scam. So all kinds of unregulated things happen. So in Telangana, we have tried out a very nice solution. It is called T-Chits, and the entire business of chit fund is now regulated using blockchain. Similarly, we have found that there are women self-help groups who take loans from the banks, and banks, while they have details about the group per se, they don't have individual level details. What is the credit history or the credit track record or the repayment record of individual members? So there also we have identified blockchain. Then in the civil supplies department, we have tried one use case. You already mentioned about the vehicles life cycle management, etc., etc. So what I am trying to point out is that practically in every government agency, there could be one or more requirements where blockchain can be a very good solution. So if there is a central agency which offers blockchain as a service to the entire government agency, and that central agency takes the responsibility of modifying the laws and rules and creating more public acceptance, etc., then that model works. I guess Tamil Nadu is working on similar lines, though I'm not 100% sure. But I guess this is the way in Telangana, Kerala, and other states also to move forward.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jayesh. Tamil Nadu is working on the blockchain highway, and depending on the need, the respective departments can adopt whether blockchain is relevant or not relevant. I have one more question, if Madam allows. See, we wanted to introduce the digital currency, particularly for the Dwapara women's self-help group, to use the digital currency instead of a regular currency, which can be transferred between one to other, which is a secured digital currency, which will not like Bitcoin kind of a thing, which floats speculative currency. It's with a maybe 1 rupee or 10 rupee digital currency. Do you think such digital currencies will have applications in governments like Telangana government or Kerala government to help see a lot of people in the rural areas? They're worried about a lot of hackers are hacking and taking away the money and all that. Going forward, do you see to introduce such, using the blockchain technology, a digital currency, having your own fiat currency exchange? Is that a possibility, Jayesh Garu or Safi?
So,
In my view,
yeah, go ahead, Safi. Please go ahead.
So in my view, the financial inclusion in India has come to a very high extent, and again, in my view, the public trust in the financial system is good. That Government of India, Ministry of Finance, RBI is there to take care of the deposits and all. So I find that the broad adoption in government sphere for such cryptocurrencies may not be having much traction. That is what I guess.
There's a similar question from one of the listeners also. What will be the future of cryptocurrency in India? So I guess that answers that question as well. And is there anything else that any one of the panelists would like to?
A lot of governments, madam, a lot of countries, they are actually adopting the sovereign cryptocurrency, not a floatable cryptocurrency. And many governments like Australia, Japan, these governments are already adopting, and they're establishing the crypto exchanges also to deal with that kind of a sovereign cryptocurrencies, not a Bitcoin currency. Maybe I think one day Indian government also should look at the feasibility of introducing that.
Yeah, let us close this panel.
There was
Sorry
a
for
news
interrupting
that
you.
they will come out with a law very soon on the cryptocurrency in the country. But I think that has still not been tabled.
So it is
Some
fundamental.
cryptocurrencies are also used as an assets increasingly. For example, I can think about Neo or things like that. But I think again, if there is a huge level of fluctuation even in those cryptocurrencies which are backed by assets, much to the discomfort of sovereign governments today.
Okay, I think that was a really interesting panel, bringing out a lot of issues, concerns, and hopes with successful case studies that have been implemented in some states. And this will really open up a lot of opportunities for academia, research, and startups to come together, and also for government to think of a concrete framework through which this collaborative sort of engagement models can happen. With that, I thank each one of the panelists for their valuable insights, and I'm sure this would have definitely added value to the whole conference, bringing in a very pertinent issue. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear panelists. On
Thank you,
behalf
madam.
of KBA, thank you for joining Blockhash Live 2020. Thank you.